Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of conversation around the comic book movie industry and whether or not it is dying or if it's dead. Can it be brought back? Has it gone the way of the Western? Let's get into all of that. So, this conversation is coming up because of the box office results of Fantastic Four, which it'll still grow from here on out, but as it stands, it is at like $437 million worldwide, as well as Superman, who which is still growing, but as it stands right now, it is at $580 million worldwide. So these are two results that are good, I think, for these movies. According to James Gunn, let me pull that tweet up actually, or excuse me, the thread up. So somebody asked him if that rumor that it needed to make $650 million to break even and be a success is correct. And James Gunn says, absolutely false. Anyone saying that doesn't have an understanding of the film business, and we would be idiots to make a first in a franchise film that would need to make that much to be profitable. So he's not saying that they've broken even, but he's saying that they don't need $650 million to break even. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe it's the case that, actually, we need to make $600 million to break even. Well, they haven't reached that yet. That being said, there were other reports that I think it needed to make like around $500 million for Warner Brothers to be happy with the results. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I think that Fantastic Four and Superman are doing okay. Now, I've seen a lot of people look at this and say that these results are massively like disappointing. I think people were expecting Superman to make like $1 billion. For whatever reason, people were expecting Fantastic Four to like blow up and save the MCU. And by the way, these are people whose like podcasts I listen to and appreciate and respect. But I've always thought that was kind of an insane thing to expect from these two movies. And the reason why is because the comic book movie genre isn't dying right now. It's not down. Like, this isn't some revelation that's happening right now with these two movies. It's been like that. So let's go through the last four MCU box office earning movies. The Marvels made $206 million worldwide. It's not good. Now, Deadpool and Wolverine, massive success, made $1 billion. Captain America Brave New World, $415 million. And the most recent one before Fantastic Four was $382 million. So, with the exception of Deadpool and Wolverine, which, is an exception and is an exceptional movie, I mean, it's pretty clear that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is kind of dead right now. General audiences are not invested. They do not care about the MCU as like a brand right now. And they're not just going to watch a Marvel movie because it's a Marvel movie in the same way that they did during the Infinity Saga. I think that they went to go see Deadpool and Wolverine because it's a stupid crossover movie. And that is something that will bring out audiences. But I think that this notion that the Fantastic Four was going to break that mold and be this breakout hit, I always thought that was ludicrous. And to its credit, it is outgrossing, the Marvels and Thunderbolts and Captain America Brave New World. So I think it has that going for it. But then let's look at the last few DCEU movies. Let me pull that up. We got Shazam, Fury of the Gods, $134 million worldwide. The Flashity Flash, $271 million worldwide. Blue Beetle, technically I don't think this is considered a DCEU movie, but whatever, $130 million worldwide. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the creme de la creme of the latter half of the DCEU, made $440 million worldwide. Now, you can also throw the Batman in there, which was a big success at $772 million worldwide. But I think we're getting the picture here of what's going on with the comic book movie genre. As it stands right now, general audiences really only care about a comic book movie if it's like a stupid crossover event like a Spider-Man No Way Home or a Deadpool and Wolverine, right? If they can go, point at the screen and go, I recognize that character! I know who that is! They'll be excited about that. I think that there are certain evergreen characters that will probably always do well, like a Batman or Spider-Man. And so I think that's why we saw the Batman do well. But as far as just casually going out and watching Marvel and DC movies because they're Marvel or because they're DC movies, audiences just they just don't care. And that is a reality, right? That we need to accept, right? So how did this happen? Well, they started making bad movies. I mean, I do think it is that simple to a certain extent, right? Like, I just think that there's only so many terrible MCU movies and so many terrible Disney Plus movies that you can watch before you start getting jaded, right? And when you add on the Disney Plus of it all, and now you not only have to watch like a bad Thor the Dark World in order to get caught up with the DCEU, I think most of us can tolerate that. You're telling me I gotta watch She-Hulk in order to be caught up with the MCU? You're telling me I gotta watch Secret Invasion in order to be caught up with the MCU? Like, once you start adding TV shows, I mean, I think that's just going to incentivize more and more people to just drop off altogether. And when you look at the DCEU, the same similar story. They don't have as many shows, to be fair. I think it's only Peacemaker. But still, terrible DCEU movies made people just not invested in it, and they just stopped watching. And now this brings us to Fantastic Four and Superman. I would argue with Marvel, they seem to be like on their way back when it comes to just making quality stuff again, right? I think when you look at Thunderbolts, I think that's a really good movie. I think when you look at Fantastic Four, really solid movie. But you're not going to bring back your reputation with just two movies, right? Like, I keep on seeing people making the argument of, well, Thunderbolts was a good movie, and Fantastic Four was a good movie, and audiences still didn't come back, so clearly making a good movie doesn't matter. And I'm like, well, no, it does matter, but two movies isn't going to be enough. You need a string of consistently quality movies in order to build back your reputation, right? Same goes for Superman. One Superman movie was not going to just erase the awful reputation of the DCEU. That just wasn't going to happen, right? And this is actually another point that I'll make about Superman. I don't think that Superman is that relevant of a character today in 2025. I think that most people in the general audience think that he's kind of boring or that he's overpowered. You know, well, with my example of somebody who I always kind of turn to when I want to know what normies are thinking about is my sister. She doesn't like Superman, right? She's always thought he was a boring character. And so she's kind of like the target audience that Superman is trying to convert. She's actually an example of somebody that I think her husband probably dragged her to the movie. And she was telling me about how much she loved it. She was like shocked that she liked it. But again, one Superman movie is not going to just completely erase, the reputation of the DCEU. It's just not going to happen. So I think that people taking the results of these two movies and trying to paint like a narrative that, it's all over and done with, or that these results are like negative, I just don't agree with it. I think that the results have been negative for years at this point, but like, I think that these two movies are examples of things moving in the right direction. I think that they're both quality movies. The people that watched them liked them. And as you make more quality movies, then, I think that's really the only thing you can do. And hopefully audiences come. Now, maybe they don't. Maybe audiences are they're just done. And they're not going to come back for these movies. But I just don't think I don't think we're there yet to make that determination, right? Like, let's look at what the future of Marvel has. Next up, we have Spider-Man Brand New Day. I think that's going to make money just because it's a Spider-Man movie. And then we have Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. I think those movies will be big hits because they're Avengers movies. And they're stupid crossover events that again, those are that's like one of the few things that gets audiences interested in comic book movies these days. Now, DCEU, it's not quite as certain, right? Next up, we have Supergirl. I don't know about that one, right? Like, are audiences going to necessarily care about a Supergirl movie? Like, presumably that movie's going to make less than Superman. But we'll see. Somehow the first Aquaman movie made $1 billion, and Jason Momoa is playing Lobo in it. So, honestly, who knows? And by the way, I just based off of the source material that, like, the comic book movie that movie is based on, I do think that it will be an incredible movie, and I think it'll probably end up being better than Superman. But so we'll see what happens with Supergirl. But then DC is also doing other interesting things, right? After that, we have Clayface. That's presumably going to be a lower budgeted horror movie. So that one might not make a ton of money, but it also might not need to make a ton of money. But then, setting those two movies aside, I think we gotta wait to see what they end up doing with Batman, right? If either Robert Pattinson ends up being the DCEU Batman, which doesn't seem like that's the way they're going, but maybe they change their minds at some point. Regardless, we gotta wait and see what they do with their Batman. Wonder Woman is still a movie that we need to see. And again, just looking at Fantastic Four and looking at Superman, I think that these are positive steps going forward. Have these two movies saved the comic book movie genre? No. But I think it was unreasonable to expect them to when we look at the history, the recent history of comic book movies. So yeah, I mean, look, I think I'm fairly optimistic about the future. I think that at the very least, even if this is like the last gasp of this genre, I think that Marvel Studios and DC, I think they're locking in and they are probably trying to make the best content that they possibly can, right? Like, I actually do believe that, this next Spider-Man movie, I think they're trying to make that to be an incredible movie, right? The Avengers movies, those I'm a little more iffy on because those, I don't know, that I fear that movie ends up being just a mess of cameos and nonsense, but we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong. But I do think that, this Supergirl movie and Wonder Woman, like, I think they're going to end up being incredible films because I think these studios know that they are on their last legs, right? If they don't nail X-Men, if they don't nail Batman and Wonder Woman and future super people movies, like, they know that it's it for the entire genre. So we're at least going to get some good content, I think. I think we're definitely going to get more of Matt Reeves' Batman-verse, regardless of if the DCU implodes or not. So yeah, let me know what you think. Are you kind of with me where you're like, yes, these movies aren't doing great, but they are positive steps forward? Or do you think I'm coping? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.